Welcome back, Odooers. In previous videos, we covered recording bank transactions, bank synchronization, and bank reconciliation. If you haven't already, be sure to check those out. As businesses grow and have more and more bank transactions to reconcile, the process can get long and complicated. Thankfully, Odoo lets you simplify and automate bank reconciliation with reconciliation models. These are customizable rules that we can create to automatically identify specific transactions and generate counterpart entries according to the rules that we define. Let's take a look at it in Odoo. The first thing we'll do is open the accounting application. And on the bank journal, we'll click on the vertical ellipsis button, and under reconciliation, we'll click models. Here we have a list view of our reconciliation models. In addition to these models, Odoo has some matching rules that are hard-coded. For example, if 2 out of 3 elements of a transaction's partner, label, and amount match those of an invoice, bill, or payment, Odoo matches them automatically. In the list view, we have both the name of the model and the trigger, which can be manual or automated. Manual reconciliation models appear as a button that we can click to apply the model when reconciling a transaction, whereas automated reconciliation models apply automatically to specific transactions. You can see that we have these handles indicating that we can click and drag these lines around to change their order. And this is important because for each transaction, Odoo will go through this list from top to bottom to see if the transaction meets any of the matching rules of the models that have an automated trigger and apply the first one that it finds. Let's click on the top reconciliation model to open the form view. In the main body of a reconciliation model, we can set the rules that determine which transactions this model should apply to. We can leave everything blank to have the model be available for all transactions, or we can restrict it to only be available for transactions in specific journals or with specific partners, amounts, or labels. With the label, we can even use regular expressions or regex to find transactions with specific labels that match the expression that we enter here. We can also configure the model to create an activity each time that it's used. Down in the Counterpart Items tab, we can add lines to define the journal items that will be created when we use this model. In this internal transfers example, we can see that we're writing off 100% of the transaction amount to the 580,000 internal transfers account, and we're adding the label internal transfers. But we could have multiple lines to split this into multiple accounts, and we could calculate each amount as a percentage of the remaining balance. So for example, after other lines have already distributed part of the original transaction value to other accounts. Or it could be a percentage of the entire statement line's original value, a fixed amount, or even come from the transaction label itself, where we can parse and use a percentage from the transaction's label using regex. So to summarize, this internal transfers reconciliation model has a manual trigger. It's available for all transactions since the main body here is left blank. And when it's used, it writes off 100% of the transaction balance to the 580,000 internal transfers account and adds the label internal transfers. Let's click to the next one to take a look at its configuration. So the bank fees reconciliation model has an automated trigger, and it only applies to transactions where the label contains bank fees. When this happens, it writes off 100% of the transaction balance to the 656,000 provisions of a financial nature appropriations account, and it adds the label bank fees. Now that we've seen their setup, let's see these models in action. We'll go back to our accounting dashboard through the breadcrumbs, and we'll click on transactions. Here, we can see that we have a transaction that transfers 100 euros from our other bank account into this one. To reconcile that, we'll simply click on the suggested internal transfers button, and it's written off to the internal transfer of funds account. This was the suggested button because Odoo has learned that we've used this model for transactions like this in the past, but if yours isn't suggested, you can always find it with the other available models by clicking on the vertical ellipsis button. When you use the internal transfers reconciliation model, be sure to reconcile both the incoming transaction, like we have here, as well as the outgoing transaction in the other bank journal where the money is coming from. In this next example, we'll create a new transaction to show the automatic reconciliation model in action. So we'll add bank fees in the label, we'll leave the partner blank, and we'll add an amount of minus 10 euros. And when we click Add and Close, Odoo automatically writes off all 10 euros to our 656,000 account, as you can see here, thanks to the automatic bank fees reconciliation model. Let's look at one more example of a reconciliation model, and to do that, I'm going to search for our unreconciled transactions with this not matched filter. And you'll see we have a few here, all for our office rent. So I'm going to manually write off this first one to the 610,000 rent account. And I'll do the same exact thing with the second one. So set account, 610, rent. And as you see, since I've done this multiple times, Odoo has learned to recognize that whenever I have a transaction with the label office rent, I probably want to write it off to our rent account. And so Odoo's automatically created a reconciliation model for me. And I can even click on the vertical ellipsis button and then click on Manage Models. And if I remove this Created by User filter, we can see the new rent reconciliation model. And if I open it, you'll see that the label is matched using regex to have office rent. So if we want, we can even automate this model. And then if we go back to our bank matching in the breadcrumbs, we'll see that everything has already been matched. It matched those rent transactions automatically. And now you can edit existing reconciliation models and create your own to speed up the bank reconciliation process. That's all for this video. This has been your pal Dal. I'll see you in the next one.